mentioned before about the rarity of getting second chances within Hollywood, but this is honestly just a miracle. How this movie managed to get greenlit in the first place after the disasters of a couple other movies that has happened, and then get its own sequels, it's just the biggest achievement in film. Clearly, there's no other achievements, don't bother trying to Google or look up any other achievements in movie history, this is the pinnacle. This is my uneducated opinion on the movie Deadpool. Now, this movie had such a wild development. After the releasing of X-Men Origins and Ryan Reynolds just putting out the disaster that was Green Lantern, it was a really difficult time for the Fox executives to be convinced in making a accurate representation of Deadpool on the big screen, with Ryan Reynolds being the lead, and for it to have this much desired R rating, or 15 rating for us Brits over here. The director Tim Miller was allowed to make a low six-figure test reel to show the executives what their vision was going to be for the movie, and that still wasn't enough. So that was it. All hope was lost. The Deadpool movie was never going to be made. Until that very same test footage was leaked online in late July 2014. So who was the culprit? Who leaked that footage? Was it the director Tim? Was it the writers Rhett and Paul? Or Ryan Reynolds himself? But before the executives could even think about asking that question, the snowball had been pushed and it was gaining such huge praise online. And they bit the bullet, and almost 2 years after the leak itself, the film was finally released to the world. I'm really glad that they used the test footage as essentially the framework for the opening sequence of this movie. It is really enjoyable, produced by asshats, written by the real heroes. I honestly couldn't say it better myself, and I'm sure lots of other people couldn't either. Now, with this being mainly a comedy, how are the jokes? I feel that it balances the comedy well enough, as it does alleviate a lot of the jokes for more serious moments. There are some jokes which are a little bit outdated, but honestly a lot of them had more laughs come out of me than not, and they could have very easily gone from one extreme to the other with trying to make Deadpool make nothing but references throughout the entirety of the runtime. This actually has a clear vision in what themes it wants to end up touching on, going along with a surprisingly engaging story with the main character. Ryan Reynolds, obviously, as Deadpool, is perfect casting, and he is someone that has always wanted to give an accurate representation of the character. I'm pretty sure there's even a comic that came out where it references Ryan Reynolds being a good fit to play the character. The cast also includes Morena Baccarin playing Vanessa, who I think is a really strong part of this movie. She holds her own in scenes with Ryan Reynolds and being equally witty and serious, and gives us such chaotic chemistry with him. They surprisingly make Deadpool a character with a lot of relatability. Of course, I personally relate to him most when he is having those moments and breaking both of his wrists, but with this whole story being about his origin in getting cancer, I really like how they showed the impact it has on Wade with him being so vulnerable, and how it affects the loved ones around him like Vanessa. One of my favourite scenes is when they are both in the hospital and the camera is focusing on Wade as he is looking at Vanessa. There is a lot of moments where Wade is extremely anxious when trying to get back in contact, thinking now that he is not good enough anymore. That vulnerable side to him compared to his laid-back, confident attitude we are so used to seeing up to this point in the movie is actually quite heartbreaking. Colossus is finally here, voiced by Stefan Kapusek. Okay, I do know that the character was previously in the other movies, but it was such a nothing character that I didn't think it was any point in bringing him up before. But I really liked him as this Boy Scout goody two-shoes of a character. He brings that counterpart to Deadpool's bullshit antics very well, and it's good fun seeing them interact with each other. The X-Men trainee that is following Colossus is Negasonic Teenage Warhead, played by Brianna Hildebrandt, who again is a really good inclusion, providing that typical teenage attitude when interacting with Deadpool, but does show some really good soft spots when needed. The character Negasonic actually needed Marvel's approval to be used within this movie, and in return, Marvel was able to include Ego the Living Planet in Guardians of the Galaxy 2. The writers were really keen on having this character involved within this movie, purely based on her name alone, and they didn't even know what her power sets were, so they drastically changed them to fit the name better. Of course, before I have vented my frustrations with changing characters so drastically, like with Deadpool, but in this case I am okay with it because it works well enough for the movie, so that's why I'm not up in arms with pitchforks and torches. It's okay, it's fine, they can be let off this once. I did totally forget that TJ Miller was actually in this movie, and Generally, the worst part of it, but that's all I'll mention about him. Ed Skrein plays Ajax, or Francis, who is a completely serviceable villain in this, and you hate him enough that you can't wait for him to be brutally murdered by Deadpool come the end, and that's about the extent to it with his character. Gina Carson plays the side villain whose whole personality and character just resorts to standing around and looking cool and looking menacing. The only reason why I remember her is from putting this note in the script from watching it, and that says enough, doesn't it? Fuck, even the taxi driver has more of a character than that villain, who I actually really love Dopender, who is played brilliantly by Karan Soni. He ended up playing Pavatir, one of the variations of Spider-Man in Across the Spider-Verse. He is such a delightful actor. I forgot that Stanley was in this, and his cameo completely took me off guard. I'm really glad he had such a good sense of humour and agreed to be in this silly role. I remember there was, and still is, a lot of talk about the timeline of the X-Men franchise being a bit confusing. I mean, Deadpool even makes a joke about it.
McAvoy or Stewart? These timelines are so confusing.
But after rewatching these movies, it's pretty simple to follow, is it not? The timeline that we are following from now on eventually leads up to the better future from Days of Future Past. The movies that come out after this will have the responsibility of not making it too convoluted, so we should see if my comments do hold up. If anything, the Deadpool movies are the ones where the timeline buffs will come out and start thinking about where exactly they are placed within the franchise. But I pretty much just think of them as a separate part in this franchise, and it doesn't really matter when they take place within this timeline. I really like the action within this movie, and with it being R-rated, it gets as bloody as it needs to be, and also has a lot of really creative moments with its violence. The counting of the bullets at the start of this movie, and even the moment where Deadpool stabs someone then jumps on the stool to cut right through them, it's really gross but pretty awesome. This has a really good montage sequence as well, which I think has some of my favourite jokes throughout it, from the Zamboni and also figuring out whether it's sexist when fighting women. They do make a joke about the mask muffling Deadpool's voice, which I think is really great, but a little bit of a nitpick. I have seen this movie multiple times throughout the years, so I have come to notice that there are parts where Deadpool's voice is slightly muffled, and then other times where his voice is clear, as they have obviously re-recorded specific lines. I'm not distracted by it in any way, thankfully, so it's not that big of a deal. The CGI I think is pretty solid. They do make a joke of there being a CGI character in the opening credits, though I would say that there are some characters who are noticeably floaty in the final fight, but that can be forgiven because this movie had a pretty low budget. But one of my favourite usages of the CGI is for Deadpool's eye movements. It's subtle and makes Deadpool really expressive, even in the moment when Vanessa is trying to take off the mask at the end. So the budget of this movie was $58 million, and at the worldwide box office this grossed $782.6 million. And that's a staggeringly high amount, and who'd have thunk if you actually let people do their own vision and portray characters accurately, it can work. Proving the creatives right and proving the Fox executives wrong. And just like with every other opinion video I've done, let's have a look at the trailer to see if it's any good.
Shit. Did I leave the stove on?
So that was a pretty good one. I watched the official first Red Band trailer that came out all those years ago, and it was pretty generic at the start, but then it starts to really let itself get expressive and chaotic with not taking itself seriously, and that's exactly what you expect from that movie. But I just wanted to talk about the overall marketing within this movie real quick, because from what I remember, this did have one of the most unique and best marketing campaigns I've ever seen. From just having the basic city posters have a skull, a shit, and an L on it, and one of the trailers showing that it's going to be a romantic comedy, it was really unique and quite fun. You can definitely tell that the marketing department had so much creative freedom to just do what they wanted because it's such a parody of a character. But a while ago there was this controversy in regards to false advertising that was surrounding the movie Yesterday. From the trailer including Ana de Armas and having some involvement with the movie, to then the actual final cut of the movie just completely cutting her character altogether. I wonder whether studios would be thinking twice about whether to have marketing like this be involved with any movie anymore, which is a real shame. I know trailers are meant to sell you on watching the movie itself and give you a good indication about what it's going to be involved in, but this movie is a parody and it's a bit of a joke character, and there are obviously trailers out there that do depict what the movie's going to be about. I just wish creatively we can have marketing teams go a little bit all out again with silly movies like this. this. I'd certainly rather see this sort of marketing campaign happen with the Deadpool and Wolverine movie coming out, but it just looks as though Disney would only allow them to just constantly reference the fact that, yay, we can say the word fuck now, look at us go, we're being so naughty, and then allow them also to just make fun of their properties. But that's it. I mean, we'll get onto that movie when that eventually comes out. And that's about it. Thank you everybody so much for watching another video. If you'd like to give it a like, comment down below what you thought of the movie. Did you like it? Do you love it? Do you think it's a little bit overrated? Give me constructive feedback of what I could do better for next time. I always try to encourage that. Subscribe, ding the notification bell, share around with your friends and family if you think they'd enjoy this sort of content. And if you want to see more of me, I'm on twitch.tv/Visakins. There I play a lot of single player games. I'm currently going through Bloodborne, which I am loving so much. I also play games with my girlfriend Jem, my good friend so Razzie, and hopefully we can see you there soon. Thank you everybody so much again, and take care.